Hello, my name is Mark Aldrett, and I'm the developer of Script Debugger. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to examine the variables in your script and display their values in various ways. I'll start with scalar values. These are numbers, booleans, strings, dates, things like that. I'm going to enable debugging so that I can execute the script line by line. I'll step over the first statement. This area here is the result of the last statement executed, in this case 100. This area down here is the list of variables that exist currently. And you'll see the variable a number has appeared and its value 100. The value is shown in red because it just changed. If I step from to the next statement, you see that the variable a boolean value has appeared and its value is red, but the value of a number has gone to black because it hasn't changed. Here we have a string. Now I can show you the difference between best and source value. Best display is the best possible representation of this value, but source is the AppleScript expression that creates the value. In this case, we have a file specification, an alias, and best view is an explorer, and I can display the value in various forms, HMS path, POSIX path, or Finder object reference. I can also summon a quick view preview or reveal the file in the Finder. In this instance, we have a longer string. And as an aside, if I double-click on a variable, I can create a standalone window to view that variable. This is useful if the value is long and you want to see more of it at one time. And a date. And just as another little trick, if you shift-click on best and source, you can see the two representations of the value at the same time. So you see the AppleScript expression and the best view. Same is true with a file spec. If I create a window and shift click, I can see both together. Now let's move on to AppleScript Objective-C values. In AppleScript Objective-C, you have to convert AppleScript expressions, numbers, into Cocoa objects, an NS number in this instance. If I step over this statement, we see that an NS number has been created and its value is shown. Note that if you do this in the script editor, what you'll see is a hexadecimal pointer to this object. There'll be no way to know what kind of an object it is or the value that it holds. In this instance, we have a Boolean value, a string value, a longer string, a file specification, some data, and rich text. Here again, the best view actually displays the rich text, whereas the description just shows the Cocoa description of what's happening. Now I'll move on to collection objects. These are lists and records in AppleScript. Here we create a list and you can see the result of the statement, each of the items, and the list is expandable in the variables display. Here we have a record and a more complex record. Now we can deal with AppleScript Objective-C collections. Here we have an array, NS array. You see, just like an AppleScript list, you can examine its contents. We have an NS dictionary object and a more complex dictionary. And finally, an NS set object. Now I'll move on to object references. These are values that refer to objects in other applications. Here I read the value of the Finder's desktop. The result is a reference to the desktop, but in best view, Script Debugger gives us an explorer that lets us see all of the properties and sub-elements within that object. Now I can read the contents of a folder, and again I can examine each object and its properties. And here's the current selection in the Finder, and just like with the files before, I can examine the properties of the object. Now we move on to iTunes. I'm going to iterate over the selected tracks. We see the track listed here. It's in this variable called a track. I can expand that and look at all of the properties. Now photos. The result of the selection in the Photos app is a media item, and again I can look at all of its properties. Next, I'll show you how Script Debugger lets you work with images. Here I have code that reads an image into a variable. The source display of that is the hex data of the image, but the best display is the image itself. Similarly, if you read an image from an application like iTunes, you can see the actual image within Script Debugger, or if you like, you can see the hex data. And finally, in AppleScript Objective-C, if you create an NSImage object, you can display it natively as well. Finally, I'll show you how Script Debugger helps you to work with URLs and HTML strings. If I create an NSURL object, you'll see that in Best View, that URL is rendered as a web view. You can still look at the AppleScript Objective-C object if you'd like. Similarly, if you create a variable with an HTML string, Script Debugger will notice this and display a web view in best mode. You can still look at the actual HTML in source view if you'd like. Here's another example. We create an HTML string and it renders, and as we update that string, the web view changes. We can see both together if we'd like, and as this program runs, we can examine the result. So in summary, I've shown you how to examine the value of scalars, lists and records, object references, images, URLs, and HTML strings.